city. So,
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, man,
yeah,
it's
buddy.
great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Of course.
So before we get into your very interesting, rich story, I want to know 4 years ago, we were trying to figure out how we were going to get out of this pandemic, what it was going to do, the ramifications. How did you survive that time period? And how did it ultimately change the way that you live life now?
I so I was a musician before that. I was a touring musician. And I mean I was signed to a label. We were touring a lot of the East Coast of the United States. And then I was laying on my couch probably a month into COVID, and I mean, for me it wasn't as bad. I mean, I've did 18 years in the penitentiary, so like, oh no, I have to stay home and the government's gonna feed me money and like, you know, so I was laying on my couch and I was watching YouTube and I saw a guy named No Life Shack and he was doing a reaction video. And I'm like, and I looked and like this guy's got over 1 million subscribers. I'm like, this guy's clocking right now just watching music, and music's my whole life. Like, I can do that. If that guy can do it, so can I. So I went down to my basement, popped on a webcam, and like, all right, so I'm gonna try a reaction video to Mushroom Head, which is another Cleveland thing, and we did not get along. And so I was like, you know what? I'll give him a fair shake. I'll use this music video to show that I can be fair and independent, even though I don't like 90% of the people in that band. Let me do it. I watched it and I gained like 200 subs. And I was
Yeah.
like, whoa. So I did another one, gained another couple hundred, did another one, gained another couple hundred. And then I had a buddy of mine. He's like, dude, I've been doing this for a while. You're already higher than I am. Let me give you some tips and pointers. So I refined it. And then, I mean, within 90 days, I had, 30,000 subscribers and was making, 5 grand a month. And
Wow.
I'm like, okay, this is my gig. I can do this. So then I started podcasting, which then led me into like, I mean, I didn't know anything about technology.
Yeah.
And so this was a sharks are born swimming learning experience for me. So then I started and when I started to get that global audience, I'm like, here's an opportunity for me to help people realize like you can endure anything, you can get through anything, you are worthy of the greatest life you can imagine. Your happiness is important. Your past and your trauma does not matter. And let me help you. And so I started to do podcasting and it just kind of blew up from there until I decided to leave my ex and then it all went to shit. And she
Wow.
hacked in and got my channel hacked and ugh, that's what
Wow.
ultimately got me to leave Cleveland.
So let's get into right now exactly what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
I am a motivational speaker and an author. Uh, and I work at the Boys and Girls Club and I teach music and photography. And I am a consummate believer in living every moment of your life to its absolute fullest and doing anything that you want to do in this lifetime.
So when you look back on this hijacking of your previous life and things that transpired, and now that you've had a little bit in the rear view, would you do anything different? Would you say change the wrinkle in time?
Nope.
Okay.
Everything that we go through puts us exactly where we are.
Yeah.
And so if we are not happy with the life that we have at this current moment, change it.
Yeah.
Do something different. There's nothing that can stop you from doing that. It's your choice. So in essence, we are all living the life that we want to live,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of us might look at that and be like, I don't want to live this life, but you're doing it.
Yeah.
So obviously you do want it because nobody can make you do anything you don't want to do, right? Like you don't go jump into a pit full of fire because you don't want to.
Right.
So why are you living a life of distress and anger and hatred and unhappiness? You don't have to.
Yeah.
You're doing it because you want to, right?
So let's go back to when you were in the third grade. What did you want to be when you grew up? Was it a musician?
Yeah. I I I mean, you know what? For me it was a lot. I was so abused as a kid. Like I had no idea what the future even almost looked like. right? Like for me, it was a daily survival mechanism to just to get through it. I mean, I was being abused by 5 or 6 different men, a couple times a week, for years, from the time I was 5 until I was 10 or 11 years old. You know what I mean? So for me, it wasn't even about what do I want to do when I grow up. It's just how do I avoid going to Uncle Mike's house this week, or how do I stop Tim Klinger from coming over to the house, or how do I not go to Daryl Hall's house, and you know what I mean. And so
Yeah.
for me, it was, but I did want to be a musician. I loved music. My mother was a singer-songwriter, and so she would always play her acoustic guitar and sing me songs. And whenever these men were around, or because most of them were friends of my mother, so they would come over, and whenever they were, I would run to the closet and grab my mom's tape box and put music on and get lost in some Meatloaf or some Harry Chapin and or some White Snake, and just transport myself to a different place, and music was that saving grace for me.
What was the first live concert you saw that blew you away, that made you think, I want to be up there one day and do that?
1996 Pantera White Zombie at Pine Knob in Detroit.
Wow.
That's
Man,
when I knew I was what, I was 15, maybe 14.
yeah,
And that was the first. I'd never been able to actually get to a concert. I've seen some backyard concerts and at bonfires and whatnot, but never went to an actual concert. And seeing that just blew me away. Right,
yeah,
just I was addicted. From that moment forward, I was stuck. And then I ended up seeing like Tool, and seeing Maynard Keenan and Tool in
oh,
concert was life changing. Right, like
yeah,
I need to do this. You
yeah.
know. But
It's
then I went to
crazy.
prison very shortly after, so I didn't see another the next concert actually was Quiet Riot at Blossom Music Center in Akron, Ohio.
Wow. That's
and,
wild.
and that was still inspiring for me. I'm like, look at these guys. No,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, I'm wrong, because I did see Godsmack and Pantera, or Godsmack and Metallica in 2004 in Tucson, Arizona, which
Wow.
was a bucket list dream for me for Metallica, because they
Yeah.
were they were my be all end all of music.
I never saw them, but I couldn't imagine that crowd. That oh, everybody in that crowd had to be moving with the music.
Yeah, we were the first time I've seen him a couple of times since then, and Godsmack's become one of my favorite bands. I just went to Vegas and saw them in a private show for their Vibes tour. And it was amazing. But I was on the second tier in the crowd, and it literally felt like Lars Ulrich looked at me and pointed. I was standing on the balcony, shirt off, beer in my hand, going crazy. And it literally looked like he looked up, and James at the same time kind of looked up at me, and we were like, "Oh." And I mean, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'6", so I'm standing over this balcony. I'm all tatted up, blah, blah, blah. And so I felt like they saw me, and
Yeah.
it ignited something in me. I literally started a Godsmack cover band like a week later,
Wow.
and and music's been it ever since.
So you've gone through hard times, obviously, growing up, going to prison, all of these things that you've had to evolve into who you are today. Who has been that hero for you? Who's been that inspiration that's kept your head in the game?
Um, well, aside from my real life mentor that I met while I was in solitary confinement, while I was incarcerated, my top three guys have always been George Clooney. George Clooney has always been an inspiration to me for some reason. I love his demeanor. I love his attitude. I love his kindness. And Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington he is the epitome of perseverance, of never giving up, of belief in yourself, of eloquence, of having a respectful demeanor, and never giving up on yourself, right? and
Yeah.
and so Denzel has always kind of stuck out for me. And then The Rock, The Rock, to me, I took those three men were my idols, and I just tried to take a little bit from each of them to develop my own personality. I learned while I was incarcerated that you can be anybody that you want to be, right? You choose who you are. And I did not like who I was, because I was such an abused kid. So I put on all these masks of survival and of toughness and of anger, and I didn't like that. And when I learned that there's a wonderful book called Personality Plus, and the L Factor. If you read these two books, it literally can break down that you can define who you are. You build your personality by choice. And that's what I did. I took some of The Rock. The Rock has this big, charismatic personality and big smile, and I'm like, I want that. I want that in my life. So I just stopped caring if people thought I looked stupid or if I looked goofy, and I just put on these big smiles and this big charisma, and it worked for me. And I took, the eloquence of Denzel Washington, and I took the suave coolness of George Clooney, specifically George Clooney's character Seth in From Dusk Till Dawn. I
Yeah.
thought that guy commanded respect, held himself wonderfully. That and then Ocean's 11, right? Like
Yeah.
seeing those two characters for me, that was the George Clooney that I aspired to be like,
You know,
without
the
robbing and killing and all that good stuff.
right. Right. So the one thing that's very key about you is that, there's a level of when people go to, and I only know this just from stats, the level of recidivism, the level of people going back into the system is crazy. How did you, what mental quote, what mentality did you aspire and find that completely eliminated that and made you into this evolved creature where you're teaching people a better way to
Well,
live?
well, I was a two-time loser. I went in when I was 16. I got out when I was 21, and I was out for about 20 months. And I was just a train wreck of a human being. And I went back when I was 23 in 2004, and I stayed there till I was 35. But I came across a quote from Mark Twain that has kind of been the guiding light for me ever since. And that is, let us endeavor to live that when we come to die, even the undertaker will mourn. And for me, the Undertaker is one of the coldest people in the world, right? He puts bodies in a grave on a daily basis, so he's so accustomed to it. If I can live the kind of life that will make the Undertaker sad
Yeah.
when you put me into the ground, you've lived an accomplished life.
Yeah.
That and Viktor Frankl, the most amazing author I think I've ever come across in my lifetime, said, "Suffering ceases to be suffering the moment you give it a purpose." And for me, most of my life was suffering up until that moment. And I said, you know what? So the suffering has been my shackle. It has kept me in despair and depression most of my life. If I give that suffering a purpose, and that purpose is to teach, is to help other people learn how to deal with your trauma and your pain in the past, it's no longer suffering. Now it's a teaching mechanism.
Yeah.
And ever since I hit that corner, I've evolved and just have metamorphosed, whatever,
Yeah.
into the human that I am today. And I'm really happy, and I'm proud of myself, right?
So being on the other side, being this evolved person that's gone, put that past behind you in an existential notion. What was the first time that you saw somebody change and you're like, wow, I was there and I've evolved to this point where I'm helping somebody get out of there?
Um, I have several people actually that are in my sphere of influence, that have made these changes. There's a wonderful man named Sean Crane that lives in Santa Barbara, and he did a good little chunk of time as well, and has turned his life into something incredible as well. He uses it a platform. He's a personal trainer, big stocky guy. He's into the gym stuff, so he uses it, and he's built himself a beautiful life and a beautiful empire. But one of my best friends, his name's Dustin Gordon. We call him Ghost. He's been incarcerated for 27 years now. He's got three to go. Um, he is the epitome of enduring, the epitome of perseverance. This man he was 15 or so. Him and his sister were playing with his father's gun. He accidentally shot his sister in the neck. She died. They wanted him to plead guilty to murder for 10 years. And he said, no, I didn't murder my sister. It was an accident. I didn't mean to do it. So they found him guilty and gave him 30 when he was 17 years old. And he has about 2.5 years to go. And this man has single-handedly instituted the Calvin College program in the Michigan Department of Corrections. He's working on his MBA right now, just got a $4,500 grant from Cal State to finish his master's. He is teaching guys how to get education while you're incarcerated. And he's done it with no outside help. He's done it, well, he's had the outside help, but he's done it himself. He solicited that help through writing letters, thousands of letters to solicit help to get his education. And he now teaches these guys how to do this. So he's responsible for so many men leaving with associate's degrees and graduating. He's an amazing human being, and I can't wait for him to get out.
Yeah. So as a speaker, what's the best speech you've ever seen?
You know what? I'm Gary Vaynerchuk, out
Yeah.
of all people. Um, I don't necessarily agree with his approach in the language he uses and whatnot. I don't. That's his thing, and it works for him, and it works for the people that go to see him. But one of the greatest speeches that I ever saw was him on stage talking about the things that hold you back in life are the people that you give that to. Like if your mother says, if your mother is what's holding you back, say F you, mom. All right. Get out of my way. If it's your wife, if it's your kids, if it's your dad, it doesn't matter who it is. You can't serve from an empty cup. You have to take care of you and this first in order to be in the position to serve the people that you love best and even people that you don't know. That's what puts you in the best position. You cannot allow anything to get in your way. You have to be the master of your own world. And the way that he delivers it, even with the F bombs that he gives off, it's so meaningful to me. It almost made me cry
Yeah.
watching this man. And because it just spoke to my heart, because most of us do that. I still do it from time to time. My wife and I both do it from time to time. We're business owners. So we sometimes we cater to the people that are around us, and we don't do something because we are afraid of how it will be received by other people.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to not do that. You follow your heart with whatever it is that brings you inspiration and passion. You do that regardless of who says anything, right? Because this is your life. You get to live it. Nobody else gets to live this life. In fact, the entire world would not exist if you weren't here,
Yep.
because you're the one experiencing this. So are we all actually here?
Yep.
This is your experience, right?
It's the
Make the most
Matrix.
of it.
It's the Matrix question for sure.
X, red pill or blue pill?
That's it. So one of the foundational pieces of us evolving and growing as humans, as you mentioned, I think music's huge. It's seminal for all of us. But so is literature. What's that book for you in your life that you either revisit or you look back and you think that did what it needed to do for me?
Man's Search for Meaning. Hands down, Viktor Frankl. It That book, it shattered the way that I saw the world, right? I justified my behavior and my criminal activity and everything that I had done because I was abused as a child. So I felt like the world owes me something. Like I'm justified in, I used to say I was karma's enforcer, right? Karma is this, what you do comes back to you, right? So I was the vessel that karma used to level its debt on you. And so I used the trauma that I had in my life to be this horrible human being and justify it. And then when I read this book, it blew me away, because here's this Jewish man who's had a beautiful life. He's a good, gregarious, kind person, built a beautiful family, a beautiful life. And then Nazis come kick his door in one day and cart him and his family off to Auschwitz. And he's watching everybody he knows, his friends, his family, all of them be exterminated and tortured. And the whole time he's telling people, when we can no longer control our environment, we have to control this. We have to stay positive. We have to smile. We have to not allow it to determine and dictate who we are as human beings. And I'm looking at that like, wow, this guy went through all of that and was a positive, good, kind human being. I went through some of this and I was this horrible human being. It changed my life. Reading that book absolutely changed my life. If that guy can do this, so can I, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all bleed the same, eat the same, sleep the same, right? If he can do it, so can I. And that book profoundly changed my life.
So if you have a dream tonight, you run into that version of you right before you went to jail for the first time, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated, what advice would you impart?
Let it go, right? Like everyone, no, none of us choose to be victims,
Yeah,
but every single one of us choose to remain victims,
yeah,
right? You don't, just because something happens to you doesn't mean that the rest of your life is gone,
yeah.
right? And it's not a justification for causing harm to the world, right? Let it go, man.
Let it go. So, of everything that you've done, evolved into, and become at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
You know, I was named Palm Springs Person of the Year 2023, and I had no idea that that was coming.
Right on.
I was quite proud of that, but if I'm being honest, I think I have this kid, Andy Sines Jr., who's becoming one of the most proudest things I've ever accomplished in my life. I met him in juvie hall. He was sitting on the bench when I used to go to the juvie hall up here in Indio, and I would go in a couple times a month and do some mentorship with the kids. And I met him in there. And then a couple of months later, I seen him at an event that I was doing photography for the Boys and Girls Club in Indio. And his mom, or he came up to me, and then out of nowhere, this lady comes up and she says, excuse me, can I give you a hug?" And I look and I'm like, "I'm married, lady." And she said, "No, no, so am I. I'm Andy's mom." And I'm like, it took a second to
Wow.
register. And I'm like, oh, you're Andy's mom. Oh my God. Yeah, yeah. I gave her a big hug. And now she's the secretary of my nonprofit organization. She sits
Wow.
on my board. And Andy went through some things and I helped mentor him and coach him to where he is now. And he's got it all behind him. And now he is going through his senior year in high school as a normal kid. He
Right
has
on.
no probation. He has nothing hanging over him. He's a normal kid. And now he's in MMA. He is teaching other kids some of the things that I showed him and how you can get past it, how you can change the course that you're on and live a better life. And he's just now applying to raise funds to go to 7 different countries with his high school class.
Wow.
So the things that this kid is doing, he now is set up for the rest of his life. And I'm so proud of that, right? Like
Yeah.
I had an instrumental hand in correcting this kid's course. And to see that makes it worth it, right? That makes
Yeah.
every bit of pain or trauma I've ever endured worth it. I'd do it all again twice
Yeah.
if I can help that kid again.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, that's the crowning achievement.
Wow. That's amazing. So, Sonny, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone you work with, everyone in your world, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am a motivator. I think I am a teacher. I think I'm someone who has endured in order to lead, right? I've been through the fire and I have the ability to teach people how to get through it. A lot of us live lives less than what we deserve, right? Less than what we're worth. And we are worth so much. Yeah, I mean, the chances of you being born are so rare, right? And there's a reason for that, right? I've come to learn. I've been watching Sadhguru lately, and he said something that was really profound to me, that the most incredible thing about life is that there's no meaning to it. There is no meaning to life. The purpose of life is to live.
Yeah.
And for me, I've spent so much time like I'm trying to fulfill a purpose. I'm trying to lead a life of purpose and meaning, and I got lost in that when you realize that life is just meant to live, and you're meant to live it in bliss and happiness and seeing all this amazing things that the world has. Like there's, you could spend 1 million years inspecting every inch of this world and still just barely tap the surface, right? So there's so much to explore and so much to see. Don't waste your life looking back at what's back there,
Yep.
because there's so much in front of you, right?
It's interesting. I just started reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead yesterday, and they
Oh,
were just talking about this evolutionary cycle of all the beings and all of our roles and how it is, just like you said. I think it's what is so evident is always right in front of us. And it is true to have that spectral light of being a human, boom, go right into that zygote and get split is crazy. Just the
Yeah,
whole thing is insane,
yeah.
you
And
know?
we get lost in it, right? We tend to we get into these comfortable phases where there's a level of pain that we are accustomed to dealing with. And that looks like I hate my job. But I do it anyway because, I have to pay my bills. I have to take care of my family. I got to put food on the table. But you don't have to work that job,
Yeah,
right? You can do another job.
yeah,
Go find something that you like to do
yeah,
and put your passion into it. And it's the fear of what other people are going to think that prevents most people from doing this. Like,
yeah.
I'm not going to quit my job. Whoop, hold on.
Oh, you're
Yep.
good.
I'm not gonna quit my job because my wife would be angry. I'm
Right.
not gonna quit my job because I don't know how I would pay the bills in a couple months. So you're giving an excuse to not do what you really want to do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it's unfortunate.
yeah, it is. So we get off the call, time machine pulls up. You can go back into the history of Cleveland sports and see one game, one moment. Where are you going?
I think it's probably gonna be I think it was the late 70s. No, it was early 80s. And we were one play away from the playoffs. I think it was. And I can't remember the guy's name or any of the players. We had it and we gave it away. And I don't even remember if it was a turnover or if it was just a fourth down failure. But we had it. We were one play away from finally getting there, and we didn't. I
Man.
would go to that game and I don't know, Nancy Kerrigan, the guy,
Right.
stopped the play. I would run
Uh,
down on the field with a crowbar.
Great answer. Sonny, if anyone wants to dig into your world, your creative world, your world of education, everything you're doing, how do they do it?
You can just Google Sonny Von Cleveland. That works. I'm also on all social media platforms. You can go to sonnyvoncleveland.com. I have the Von Cleveland Foundation. You can find that at tvcfoundation.org. You can check out my book, Hey White Boy, Conversations of Redemption. That's available anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. You can get that anywhere. And yeah, Google's probably the easiest.
Sonny, what a great story, man. I mean,
Thanks,
just
man.
grit and truth and soul. Good work. Thank you. Keep spreading the light, my man.
Definitely will. Thank you so much for having me, my friend. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Great to meet you. Cheers.